right, let's talk about one thing, 2025. What's the biggest, most important things for everybody, both buyer and seller side, you think, to win in 2025? So we'll call this the 2025 Success Matrix. I took some time, reverse engineered, like, all right, what's different about this year? What are the most important aspects to us winning as individuals and as a team for 2025?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
The number one most important thing that anyone can have, both listing side and buyer side, is consistency. By far the number one weakness of agents is consistency, right? So I know that, have that as a foundation, is number one. Make sure I'm fully consistent. Why? Because my skill set's really good, and my other pieces of the four are really good, but I'm not consistent, what happens? Nothing, right? I can be the best at skill set, but I'm inconsistent, and I can close everybody. What happens? Nothing, because I can't build the long-term momentum to have a long sales cycle like real estate actually follow through. So by far the most important part of your 2025 plan has to be consistency, because nothing else matters if I'm inconsistent. Would you guys agree with that? I can be the best on the phones, best face-to-face, be the happiest I can have ever imagined, and have great energy, but if I'm inconsistent in how I show up, what happens to my results? You don't get them. Why? Because you have to have a long nurture cycle in real estate, both the listing side and the buy side. Buyers have a long sales cycle. If I follow up with really good follow-up for a month and I fall off for a month, what happens to the buyer? They go somewhere else, to someone else who is consistent, right? What do buyers seek when they're buying their largest asset? They want somebody who's consistent, right? And how I follow up and how I show up and how I respond to them. So by far, the most important part of anything for the 2025 plan is consistency, okay? Break that down. What's the key component to consistency, you think?
Showing up.
Showing up, that's my number one. But I have a true agenda and a calendar and really I've set what my intention is for the week. Guess what? It allows me to keep more on that intention. Does that make sense? And so what does that take? It takes discipline, right? And so I have to make sure that my consistency in 2025 is showing up. My calendar, obviously some of you guys do that naturally, but the middle can be moved. I'm able to follow that. Third piece here, consistent in my calls. Why do you think that is?
Because it's the easiest one to put off.
Easiest one to put off, right? Things come up. You have to have consistency in showing up and making sure you make them every day so I can keep my afternoon open to do the appointments so I can take that I book the calls in the morning. Does that make sense? But like that comes up where you're trying to catch up on inconsistency always costs you more. Exponentially. You guys with me on this? Like it's just so important. But I just want to make sure we map out this plan so that we can have an intention for 2025. And the other piece I think that's important that I was really looking back at, that the ones that won the biggest last year and made the biggest moves from like, let's say, middle to high, whatever it is you have to have consistency in this word right here. Growth. Looking back, I watched a lot of people go up and down, right? So they have a really good week or month or quarter, and then what happened the next one? They went backwards, right? Because what do you think stopped? Consistency to growth, right? So have a really good one. I do a 75 hard, do whatever it is, and I boom, 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 blow up. Things start going really good. And then what do? Go back to my other patterns. And so if you have the same commitment to growth, and these are things we'll talk about in a minute. This is just growth me as a human in terms of my goals, my books, my audios, staying plugged in to whatever it is that grows me, allows me to continue to have what? Consistency. Because it's much easier to keep up than it is to catch up.
For sure.
Okay, I'll say it again. It's much easier to keep up than it is to catch up. And that's important for us to make sure that we think of overall. So, second piece. Skill set's one of them, not quite skill set. What do you think comes before my skill set? That I got to make sure that I maximize the 2025.
Fundamentals.
Nailed it. Mindset, why? I see it all the time. They're amazing on Friday. Things are awesome. Whatever goes on the weekend, all of a sudden they come in Monday as a different person. That leaves you far away from what? Consistency, right? We talked about this before. You have to master the middle. Most people are all over the place. So I have to make sure that my number one thing to protect my consistency is my number one asset, which is me, okay? And that asset most of me is what? My mindset, right? So I have to make sure that I'm very intentional about making sure I, number one, keep my cup filled. And so for me to do that, number one, I have to have a plan. which means like, hey, I do this every morning, I have this every single time, whatever it is. All of a sudden it allows me to have what? Runway and space to be able to do what? Deal with issues and challenges and things that happen. And so you have to make sure that you make the deposits when? Before you need it, which obviously needs to be every day. Second piece here, I have to make sure that my mindset, my belief is expanded. Why?
I think that's one of the biggest things we combat early on is people have a lot of beliefs that are just not serving them.
100%.
Realize it. So they'll start off by, setting very small targets for themselves or saying, oh, I have XYZ feeling going on, but the ones who last they are the ones who have belief in the system and stay plugged into it.
Yep. And I got this great lesson last week that goes right along with that. I wrote for my notes, and it just says, it came from Gary Keller, obviously Keller Williams, but it's something he says all the time. He said, every human being who has a transformation or breakthrough needs two people to believe in them. Number one, who do you think it is? Themselves. And number two, one other person that believes in you without doubt, so that when your belief drops, they can fill in the gap. Right? But it doesn't help with somebody else believing you if what? You don't believe in you. Right? And so the way that I build my mindset, and like Alex talks about, is overcome my limiting beliefs, is I have to do what? Consume new ones that are more powerful, that overtake my old beliefs and allow me to do what? Expand them. What's the best way to do that? Borrow from somebody else. Videos, audios, things like that. Makes sense? You're able to listen to those things and make sure that you're able to take that in and obviously grow from that, which is important. It has to be intentional. What's the way to do that? Number one, I'll give these two together. Number one, video, audio. I'm reminding this so that you have this for your plan for 2025. It needs to be scheduled every day, the same day. Same time, same place every day. Right? If you have a tendency to get in the car and you want to play music, right? Like sometimes you have to have discipline. All right, let me hop on my podcast or my Audible, which is super important. Okay? And it's just a decision you make before it happens so that when the situation comes up, you automatically have the trigger to push the play button. That make sense? And that's something that's super important to do with that. I'd much rather, it's much more easy to numb the mind listening to music, but it's much more powerful to listen to audio and grow. Does that make sense? Second piece here, fourth piece with this, is books and reading. Why do you think that's separate?
Because that's a focus time. Like you can video audio while you're doing other things, but if you're reading an actual tangible book, not an audio book.
Yes. Yeah. So a great example for me lately, I've been into that Dan Martell I was telling you guys about. I've been crushing the podcast, been crushing the book. And the podcasts are more like feel-good stuff, right? Like here's the 8 things to do this. The book is transformational. The book is where you're taking stories and people and example and all the data is stacked in the right order so that I can have what? Growth. So the podcast is like 8 ways to, be a better leader. 8 ways to, create leverage in your life or whatever. 8 ways to get your life back. And it's cool. Like there's like one little like hits. But when I listen to the book or I read the book, guess what? It's much more transformational. I can watch the change happen and it changes my worldview. So he talks about his assistant who is overwhelmed with all the stuff going on and things like that. And then she's has all the stuff that she thinks she can't do and she can't lead her team right. And all of a sudden he has her tracker time for 15 minutes for 2 weeks. And then on day 4, what she says?
She saw the comment.
She texts him and says, don't worry, I got it figured out. Right? And it's one of those things that it allowed her to just, once you track it, you self-correct and know. And it's just so many things that we get sucked into. And we have this belief that things are the way they are until they're exposed and all of a sudden you can change your entire life just like that. Right? But it wasn't until you stack all that in the book that you have transformation. Make sense? Audio, video makes you feel good. Books have transformation. You guys with me on that? Which allow you to grow as a human and it grows your mindset to a larger capacity. So if you talk about if your capacity needs to grow, that's where you get that through the books. It can be audio or regular reading. Regular reading is more powerful because you can take notes, highlight, and you just consume more.